Everybody, please welcome Kevin Sink.
Howdy. Very good. That's so much easier in Texas than other places I go. Let's see if this one's going to work very well. Can you hear me okay now? Okay. My name is Kevin Sink. I'm going to slide it. Can you bring up, Lauren? Can you bring up the other presentation? Yeah. No worries. I'm a child of God, a husband, a father, and I work at TTI, which is an electronics distributor. And on good days, I keep them in that order. But that's not every day. And I think we all know how that feels. I am a Texan, so how many Texans do we have here? Okay, those of you who aren't originally, what country are you from? Okay, well, no, I'm not a native Texan. I lived a few places before I got here. I'm originally from Virginia. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, there. That's the state up there. So usually, most of us that live here now, that's pretty much it, right? So northeast of Texarkana. That's what I kind of think about it. And most people know about Virginia. Click, click. Lauren, click. I'm not going to do it from here, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so we get a little closer. That's the basic shape. And most people know, Lauren's going to have to click for me because it's, there we go, about Washington, D.C., right up in the north. And some people know about the next slide. Are you doing that or am I doing that? I don't know. All right, cool. All right. Some people know about Newport News, especially if you've ever been in service, where it's a big naval base in the southeast Virginia. What people don't know a lot about Virginia is the next area. I'll eventually figure out how to aim this. Maybe I'll stand over here. Virginia has several different regions. How many regions are there in Texas?
Five.
Five. Good. There's 5 here. There's a coastal plain and Piedmont area of Blue Ridge. That's where my family's from. And then you get into Deep Appalachia. And when you go even further in Deep Appalachia, you come from where my wife's family's from. Well, I used to think I was a hillbilly until I met her family. So, Virginia itself, this is an electoral map. And this will give you a concept of what Virginia is like. It is a conservative state. It has liberal government. Because, like us, they tend to put all the liberals in one town. We try to keep them in Austin. They have them in Washington, D.C., and around different news. But by and large, it's a very conservative place. And the areas that I grew up in are here, this Blue Ridge Highlands area. It is known for, first off, wait, Kevin, come on. Click. Click. Furniture factories. Martinsville, Virginia. Bassett Furniture, you've heard of Bassett Furniture?
Yes.
That's a little town that was created on the outskirts of Martinsville. And most of the American furniture from the early 1900s through the 70s was made there. It's also known for knitting mills. So places, Vanity Fair is a big, panel knitting became Vanity Fair. A lot of our clothes that we wore through the 1970s came from this area. It's known for tobacco. All that area around. It's known for NASCAR. Martinsville Speedway is the oldest speedway in NASCAR. And it's also known for moonshine. My family lives in Franklin County, Virginia. It is the largest, it's going too far. It is today the place that makes more moonshine than any other, even today. So if you've seen the TV show Moonshiners, some of those people are from Franklin County. The movie Lawless, remember that movie? Pretty rough movie? Yeah. My dad goes to church with one of the Bondurants, the guys from that movie. It's not like the movie. The movie was way overdone. The locals really didn't like it. So I'll tell you, it wasn't all that bad. Wasn't all that good either, but. So I was born in, if nothing else, I like the pictures of a cute kid. I don't know about me today. I was born in Radford, Virginia, which is outside of, we lived in Christian Square, but they didn't have a hospital. So we went to Radford, which is a suburb kind of Blacksburg, which is where Virginia Tech is, which is Virginia's version of Texas A&M. Hokies, Aggies, weird colors, the orange and maroon, kind of weird. We moved to Covington. My dad barely graduated high school. By the grace of God and a benevolent French teacher, he got out of high school. He worked at Radford Arsenal during the Vietnam War, making shells that the military would use in Vietnam. My mother went to college at Radford College. And when she graduated, she got a job at the welfare department up in Covington, Virginia, which is next to West Virginia. And he went to community college. And we moved a couple times there. Covington is a town that has paper mills. And has anybody been by a paper mill before? How's it smell? Horrible. Yes. Like, just bad. Like Texas City or something. It doesn't smell good. So, we moved a couple times there to get further away from the paper mill. And we moved from there, and my dad decided, my grandfather was a truck driver his whole life. My dad said, you know what, I can be a truck driver. So we moved to Kernersville, North Carolina, where I was in kindergarten at Cowboy birthday party. And my dad went to learn how to be a truck driver, and from there we moved up north, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Also a place where they make furniture, but the Amish people make it. Right? The guys with the buggies and the triangles on the back and stuff. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and it's cold there. Now I still wear my boots, but it's cold. So we still have that chair. From Lancaster, we moved to my grandfather's, my dad's hometown, her grandfather's, Roanoke, Virginia. He was able to get on with the same company my grandfather worked at, which was a union job, and that was a pretty good job for truck driving. I got a dog named Spotty, a little beagle. If nothing else, a beagle puppy is nice to see, right? A beagle puppy. And after working for a while as a truck driver, my dad realized that's a hard life for a family man. This is not a local route guy. This is a guy who's on call. They call tonight, you're leaving tonight. You go home for 8 hours, you sleep, they call you, send you somewhere else. You go to Buffalo one night, you go to New York City the next, you go to Boston the next. It's a rough way to be a father. And he said, I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't do what my dad did. I'm going to have to finish my degree. And he went to University of Tennessee when I was in second grade. And he studied, lo and behold, transportation. Truck driving. Right? And there I am, going to camp. Pittsburgh Pirates was the first baseball team. Our team was the Pirates. So I've learned to become a Pittsburgh Pirate fan there in Tennessee. I have no idea why, but that was my team. And what was most important about being there in Tennessee was that's where I formed my first relationship with God. I was baptized in this church, South Knoxville Baptist Church. It had burned down. Somebody had robbed it and burned it down. So when we first came there, we met in another building and eventually built a church. And our history with my family is kind of like that. Everywhere we went, we always seemed to be in these startup churches somewhere. And meeting in rooms like this all the time. In Pennsylvania, we met in a Masonic lodge. We're not even sure about it. The Masons, all that crazy stuff, with the pyramids and all the stuff they got going on. They let us meet there. So, we moved from Pennsylvania when he got to Pennsylvania again when he got a job to Allentown, Pennsylvania. And it's cold there, no doubt about it. It's about 18 inches, which is the most snow I'd ever seen. I know they're way past that this year. But it's great for a kid, not so much for your parents, because they still got to go to work. So we quickly moved from there to Louisiana. By the time I got to 6th grade, we had moved 9 times. So I had to start over a lot. And I'm not an extrovert, I'm an introvert. I have to learn how to do this, how to start over again and again and again. But we got to Louisiana in 6th grade. Down there at Blue State, right? You know where that one's at? All right. It's kind of like this. And we did a lot of fishing. Still have a pirate's hat, but it's a different hat. And we would go out in the woods. It's a great place for a kid, especially a boy, just to go be in the pool. And it was there that we really encountered as a family our first Catholics. And lo and behold, they didn't worship statues. They are really partying tonight. We learned about Mardi Gras. That was a lot of fun. They were really very kind and helpful people. They had crazy names like Thériault, Leblanc, Thibodeau, Boudreau, but they were really good. And so we ran into this culture, and coming from these other states that you saw, with the exception of Pennsylvania, I don't know where the Catholics are. They're there now. Back then, I didn't know the Catholics. You only had what your parents heard from somebody else. And we were all Baptists, so we all thought they had to be converted anyway. So by the time we got there, we learned, it's not so bad. I finally get to go, at the end of 9th grade, we moved to Texas. And it's there we discovered chicken fried and steak. That's good. There used to be a joke, oh, go so far. There was a joke about chicken fried steak in Louisiana. They say you can go west as far as you want. You go all the way to St. Charles. But once you see the billboard that says chicken fried steak, turn around, you don't go too far. They say it like Cajun sailors. I went to Conroe High School. I learned to skateboard because you learn to do things that you can do by yourself when you're starting over. You can ride a skateboard. And then from there, I went to Promised Land on Earth, College Station, Texas. Go to Texas A&M, home of the Fighting Texas Aggies, where I did a few things there. I worked on Bonfire. Still had that. I met my wife there. She taught me how to dance. And after going through A&M, and while I was still in A&M, I was a co-op student in college, and I worked up here at General Dynamics, which is now Lockheed Martin. And come to find out, about 2 years ago, I was at Mr. Corcoran's house, this fellow here in the back, and John worked in this, you worked on the 6th floor, right? I worked on the 5th floor. And here I am, 20-some years later, I live 2 doors down from him. And I was over at his house one day, and a mutual friend, I recognized the guy's name, it's really a common name, and started talking. I found out I used to work with this guy, and now it looks smaller. And he's a really good neighbor. If all our neighbors were that good. But I worked as a co-op student at General Dynamics, so I would go back and forth between one semester in college and one semester up here, and then back down there. And then when we graduated, I stayed to go to graduate school, and she moved to Austin to work. And I go back and forth. So this little triangle in my life develops. And back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But when I finally graduated and got a first real job, so to speak, permanent job, it was at the company I'm at now, TTI. And I know that's unusual. I'm still there, 23 years later. I can't find anything else. It's a good place to work. I was a very serious salesperson. Very serious. But what became important there was our relationship at this parish, St. Cyril of Alexandria. And the pastor there is now Father Mario Arroyo, was the director of vocations, and then he came to become the pastor at this parish. Very dynamic speaker, originally from Cuba. He's always saying these funny stories about growing up in Cuba. And we would get involved in all kinds of stuff. And they asked one time for people to lead a Lenten Bible study in their homes, just during Lent. And they would meet in different people's homes each week. And when we got done with that, we decided, well, we would just keep going. So the group kept meeting. And we'd just go find the Bible study book we liked, and we just kept going. And it was 9 years. We kept going. And different people would come and go. And we were involved with marriage preparation.
retreats. And then one day, the pastor walked by and he says, "Hey, somebody told me you're not Catholic." I got outed. So, you know what? That didn't end anything. You know, he was a kind and smart pastor, allowed me to continue to serve, and talk to me. And at the time, I wasn't sure. I wanted to intellectualize everything. And my wife can tell you, I can analyze things to death. The spreadsheet, the first house we bought was as big as a sheet. We printed it out. It's humongous. And so I have engineering tendencies, but I'm not an engineer. But in Houston was really where we got really involved very well in our parish. And we had our dog. And that was another very important thing in Houston. Then we moved to Fort Worth. After working in Houston for about 10 years, make sure it stops. Nope. I can't control this clicker very well. Working in Houston for about 10 years, the CEO of our company asked me to come up to Fort Worth and to work up here with a group of people that helps our salespeople become better salespeople. And we go to different branches all over the country. We help them be better at their salesmanship, but also in the way they process things in the system, just be efficient and effective. And I did that for about 5 years. And it's funny how I still kind of do this across the except that guy's a lot skinny. He has a cool phone. I keep going ahead. So here, I'm going to go all the way back. Lauren, can you take me back to the picture that has of the parish? Thank you. You can control it better than I can. At St. Michael over in Bedford, I went to a Little Rock Scripture study, and we attended for a while, and then the person who was leading it left, and it said, "We think you should lead it." I'm still a closet Catholic. All right, so it's, okay. I've learned, if they asked you, it's kind of like in Alaska, there's not a lot of people, so they don't check your credentials so much. So they ask you to do it, I said, okay. We lead this, so here I am again, in this parish involved, and still not formally Catholic. Well, during this time, after 5 years of the sales operations job, the CEO calls me to his office again and says, "I want you to take over quality." I said, quality, that's all just tracking numbers and stuff. And I like numbers, no doubt about it, I like numbers. But it's not really, I can't be as creative as I like to be. He says, "Just do it for a couple years, and we'll, that's just give me 2 years." I said, "Okay, I'll do it." It was nothing like I expected, much harder. In our roles, we have a fantastic company, no doubt about it. And we're getting better all the time, but we do make mistakes. And a person can make a very simple mistake. And I was talking with Aaron today about putting a label on a part. It's the wrong part. It was it took the person 1 second to make the mistake. It cost us $25,000 and about 250 man hours at the executive level to go to that customer's shop on a weekend, on a holiday weekend in Michigan, and sort all their inventory out and explain to all their executives why we made the mistake, how we fixed it, and how we're never going to do it again. And I didn't even make the mistake. It's one thing to go apologize when you screw up, but you got to go apologize when somebody else screws up. But you do. And so it's a pretty stressful job. And it takes a lot of diplomacy. And so that, and as I'm getting older, and unfortunately not thinner, I had a bout of diverticulitis, which is not that big of a deal. It happens to a lot of us as we get older, especially with the American diet. But I'm probably about 20 years too young for me, but it's hereditary. And I was getting kind of scared. I've got to go get one of those scopes, that men have to get when they're 45. Don't want to get one of those. I was pretty scared about it. And I have never asked a saint for any intercession. Remember, I've been Baptist. I had somebody else, a saint, to pray for me? What are you talking about? I figured out by this time we're not praying to them. All right, I got that part right. But I was starting to get scared. He said, we've been studying and talking about the woman with the hemorrhage, which was a reading not too long ago, just a few days ago, right? The woman with the hemorrhage. And she reaches out, she says, "If I can just touch the tassels on Jesus' cloak, I'll be healed." And I said, "Woman with the hemorrhage? I bet you're up there. I don't know your name. No, we don't know your name. Saint Woman with the hemorrhage. Pray for me." And the next morning, I come downstairs and I grab the Daily Missal. And it's sitting on the shelf, and it's all dusty because I never opened it. I don't go to Daily Mass. Didn't read the Daily Mass. At that time, didn't read the daily readings. And I open it up for that day's reading. Guess what? The woman with the hemorrhage. That's a sign. I know it. Okay. Number one, I'm going to be okay. Number two, I'm going to be Catholic. So, not long after that, somebody spoke at Mass about RCA. It might have been even that week. And I went back and told them, I said, and they were looking for sponsors. I said, I don't want to be a sponsor, but I need one. And I go join RCA. And I did. And they rushed me through that process. And today, I lead the end part of RCA, which is called Purification, Enlightenment, and Mystagogy. For the people that, once they're ready to get in, they're going through this right now, just about to come in at Easter time. We have about 15 or so people coming through at that parish. I'm really excited. It's a great group of guys, young ladies and men. It's very exciting. We still have the Bible study, but now I'm official. Right? I'm a card-carrying Catholic. So that's the story of who I am, how I got to be here. I'm going to go forward a little bit, because 2 weeks ago we were in another place, and no, we haven't moved here yet. But it sure would be nice. But I bring this up only to show you that in my mind, I'm still 17 years old. That kid with the skateboard is this old man with the surfboard. I was better at skateboarding. And my daughter is not that little girl anymore. She's growing up way too fast. But she's down in 6th grade, and she's only moved one time. Not 9 times like me, or 23 times like I have now, but one time. And I'm glad to be here, and I'm proud to be where we are. And so I'm going to shift gears a little bit for you. And for an interlude, because we're thinking about beaches here, I'm going to tell you my daughter's favorite joke. There was a man driving through town, and he's got 3 penguins in the back seat. And the policeman sees the guy driving by, sees a penguin in the back seat. That's weird. Pulls him over and says, "Sir, you can't be driving around town with penguins in the back seat. You have to take them to the zoo." "Yes, sir, I will." 2 days later, driving through town, 3 penguins in the back seat with sunglasses. The policeman pulls him over and says, "Sir, I thought I told you to take those penguins to the zoo." He said, "I did. We had a great time. Today we're going to the beach." You can tell that joke to anybody. We tell it all the time. So, as I said, I grew up Baptist, and my personality is such that I try to intellectualize things. I try to think through, what does it mean to be Catholic? What does it mean to be Christian? Am I reading this text? Like the other day, we talked about the Cain yesterday, Cain and Abel, and we talked about that, and we looked at, and I read today's reading, or was it yesterday's? Talked about, it was Noah. So the 7 pairs, 7 animals, 7 pairs of animals, clean animals on the ark, and 1 pair of unclean. Now wait a minute, I thought there was only 1 pair of every animals on the ark. Well, there is. It's a different version. 2 versions. Well, that'll throw a fundamentalist. Shoo! What do you mean there's 7? Well, was the world made in 7 days, or there's a lot of things there in Genesis that you can throw a fundamentalist out there, just drive crazy. Growing up as a Baptist, that was kind of my tendency. It's kind of hard to reconcile all that stuff. Growing up as a Catholic, you get to learn and not get confused about all that stuff. So it wasn't until I had this case of diverticulitis, which is, again, not a huge issue, but it was scary to me, that I realized it's not something in my head. That's not where I need to be looking for answers. It's in the heart. Faith is about the heart. You're not going to intellectualize faith. And God kept coming back to me and giving me chances, sending me signs. My mother kept telling me about signs. I used to say, "Oh, Mom, you're crazy. All these signs. Watch for the signs, boy." They were there. Lots of times they would come into our lives. You know when they always came? Not when I was looking for something about a decision I wanted to make, but when I needed them. When I was scared to death, when I didn't have any money, when we didn't know what to do, that's when the sign showed up. He was always there, showing me those signs. So what I want to talk to you tonight is about being Christian in a politically correct society. And I think your generation has it both easier and harder than perhaps mine. A little bit about generations and how I think you might see this. If we go back to World War II with I'm trying to think through the greatest generation, what was it called? The ones that went through the Great Depression in World War II, very frugal, right? Well, they had nothing in the Great Depression. They saved everything. Save. So the baby boomers come along, and they never got anything because their parents wouldn't buy anything because they saved it all the time. So what do? Work, so that you can buy some things that you never had because your parents wouldn't buy. Well, my parents, the baby boomers, because they worked all the time, created me a latchkey kid. So in 3rd grade, I came home, my parents were at home. I went inside and figured out what I could figure out, tried not to burn the house down until I got home. And so we react to that by becoming helicopter parents to the millennials. We're involved in everything they do because our parents weren't at my baseball games. They were working because their parents never bought them anything. It's, these things just go on and on and on, and it's, there's always some balance in between. It's not exactly like that, but to some degree we react to how our parents treated us and our generations before us. So when we get into the millennials, which is really a little bit younger than you, of course, but trending in this direction, these people are very technologically savvy, no doubt about it. We were joking today about somebody not knowing how to burn a CD. I said, what do you mean you don't know how to do it? Because I don't have to. I got a 13-year-old boy. I don't have to know how to do that. I have to ask him to do it. They do a lot of group work. Because we put them in teams all the time. Come do this team thing. So they know how to do that very well. They're at the same time both less interpersonal and more connected than anybody has ever been before. Right? You got Facebook, you know everything. I had somebody yesterday, I got so embarrassed. She says, Kevin, you're going to be speaking. My wife comes in and she says, they got this thing on Facebook where you're going to be talking. Somebody in Houston had seen it. And I said, well, look at this. And I showed him my dad's webpage. My dad is enigmatic, no doubt about it. He plays blues harmonica in a blues band. That's what he does now. He's retired, that's what he does. And he's got a Facebook page. I don't even have a Facebook page. Oh my gosh, my dad's got a Facebook page. I don't have one. There's something wrong with it. We don't get as much help from society as I did the generations before. I'll give you an example. When I grew up, this was a TV show I was not allowed to watch. If you've ever heard of this show, it's about a young man who pretends to be gay so that he can live with 2 women, and the landlord will let him live there. You are having to deal with this on the Android commercial. A young man proposing to another man. On primetime TV. That's different. TV doesn't censor itself for you like it did for my generation and for your kids. Society's not helping us out there. I had 3 networks, PBS and a couple of local channels. Some places like that, some places only have 1 TV. But now we have 500 channels and there's still nothing on. Seriously, we got more information coming at us like crazy and it's not worth watching. It seemed like we had more to watch when we had fewer choices. News reporting has evolved into this newstainment, right? You've got Fox News or you've got CNN or MSNBC, and it's all about dividing us and telling us what we want to hear, not what really is the truth. And you take that a little bit further, what do you do when nobody reads the paper, nobody watches TV? Where do you get your news anymore? We don't have time for that. It's a little blurb that pops up on our homepage. Those 3 or 4 stories, of which 2 or 3 of them run out of People magazine. It's not worthwhile. We had to say no to drugs. Ronald Reagan was my president, and his wife taught us to say no to drugs. Now we can go to Colorado and buy whatever I want, or Washington. And those states that border them are having all kinds of problems with people driving back with cars full of pot. What do you do? What do I tell my daughter? What's right? My laws aren't helping me. My TV doesn't help me. My laws don't help me. Growing up, we had melting pot. Who knows Schoolhouse Rock? TV show? Okay. There's one about the melting pot. You came to America, you become part of America, we melt together. But we're trending now toward these multicultural pockets. And believe me, I love multicultural things. I will eat Mexican food every day of the week. My mother-in-law says I'm the most Mexican person in the family. But we're not a melting pot anymore. We can be individual. We can be our original culture and stay here and not communicate as much with one another. School busing was a big issue in the 70s because we were coming out of the Civil Rights Act, and that plays a role today. At that time, white kids are getting bused to black schools, and black kids are getting bused to white schools across different lines. So my generation went through that, and today, I think it's much easier for all of us. And one of the greatest things I like about the Catholic Church is when I walk in, there are people from all over the world, every color in that church. Growing up, when I went to church, we had white people from all over town. But just white. If I wanted black people, I had to go to the Black Baptist church. And that would scare me to death. Those people can sing and dance. I would ride my bike to school, right? Scared to let my daughter ride her bike to school. I could work at if I got out of school, I could probably find a job at the factory. Not so many factories around anymore. They're most all gone. Now, people in China have a much better life because of those factories. There's no doubt about it. But it does mean there's not as many options for all of us as there once was to make a good living. So it's very important. Life is much more complex. Some great things about society today. There was a tendency, and I have to say this is a little bit from the outsider's view because I wasn't a Catholic growing up, but I have heard that the family Bible was on a stand on the TV or on a table, or that big thing with the 8-track in it. And that's where it stayed, and you really didn't study the Bible. The priest would just tell you what you needed to know. All right, I know that's a generalization, but that was... So my daughter one day, my wife was saying, my wife was trying to take a picture. She said, I don't have a camera. My daughter goes, you have a phone, don't you? Yeah, you got a phone, you got a camera. And to her, that's all the same thing. Never seen a phone without a camera. Also known as what's a phone book? Right? What do you need a phone book for? How do you find a phone number? She was working on a worksheet one day and was trying to teach her about things like phone books. You need to look up a phone book. Phone number, use phone book. She's Google. I need a phone book, I use Google. Right? So smartphones make things a lot easier, which means today, what do you mean you don't have a Bible? You got a smartphone, don't you? You can get on usccb.org and get the New American Bible, every single verse for free, anytime you want. The Bible is always with you. And what's this on the table? I think it's called an ashtray. That's one great thing. We just don't have smoking like we used to, and that's wonderful. There's a lot more of us around than there used to be because we don't smoke so much. And that's a good thing. The Internet of Things. Things are everything. They're telling us everything's going to have a sensor on it, and we don't even know what that means yet. We don't know how many things we're going to be able to know about. It's huge. I am so excited. When I went to Hawaii, I actually went down there for a conference. So when you tell people you're going to Hawaii for work, they're like, yeah, guess you are, right? Well, it really did. At least for 2 days I did. And so at the conference, there are some brilliant people that are thinking about amazing things. There are people that are talking about the Internet of Things, and they're saying that one of the big issues is not the Internet of Things, but the servers. Right now we have about 2 zettabyte, is that maybe the right word? A gigantic amount of data in the cloud. Well, what's the cloud? The cloud is a bunch of servers owned by Google or Microsoft. It's not magical. And in 5 years, we're going to have 10 times that much. It took us 5 years to go from 1 to 2. It's going to take us 2 years to go from 2 to 20. That means you're going to have so many more servers. We can't do that. These guys are going, we can't do that. We got to have sensors that are smarter so they don't just send up everything, only the part that you need. So we don't have to have massive server farms everywhere. There are people thinking about not only what can things do, but how are we going to make them work. There is a man that told us about fibers that they're making that have a piezoelectric effect, which means as you pull or stretch the fiber, it can generate electricity. And they want to make a mesh that goes around the heart, that as the heart beats, it creates electricity that powers the pacemaker in the heart. Pretty dang cool. Amazing things are coming our way. Amazing. Their world is going to be so much different. The world is altogether healthier, safer, more complex, and more dangerous all at the same time. We don't even know really what's coming our way. Let's click forward. So the question for us really becomes, how am I going to manage all the decisions I'm going to be able to make? I can't even imagine what all these questions are going to be. This is something I saw at that conference. Wouldn't it be awesome? How many people are young parents of young children? Got any? One. All right, so one of the things you have about young kids is you pretty much know when their diaper's wet, but not exactly all the time. Sometimes they get a diaper rash. But what if your cell phone went off as soon as it got wet? There would be no diaper rash. That'd be pretty good. That's awesome for kids. But that is the level of interconnectedness that's coming our way. There is nothing you don't even know that you need to know that yet. And we're going to have, that's coming to us. So the question, how are we going to do this? Well, I'm going to borrow from the financial guy, Dave Ramsey. He says, live like no one else so you can live like no one else. One of the things especially hard, I'll tell you a story when I was about your age. We had a good friend whose wife was an architect, and they lived in Austin, and they lived in one of those small houses that got redone, so it was really nice. And their house was always immaculate. Immaculate. We go over there like, oh, we are slugs. Look at their house, it's beautiful. And one day, we were in the bathroom or something. Somehow it slipped that the maid hadn't been there that day. Well, no wonder it's beautiful. We don't have a maid, no wonder. And so what you learn is trying to keep up with the Joneses. It's not ever what you think it is. They're not always able to do everything you can't do. The super mom that's out there, right? She has a tough time. They look like they got all this neat stuff, but they're in debt up to their eyeballs, selling their souls to buy that stuff. So that's one thing I want to leave us with. Use your well-formed moral compass. You are Catholics. You have got a fantastic foundation through your catechism, through our catechism, through our what we learn, and it's so hard for others on the outside to understand how deep our faith is. Because so many Christian denominations in America are very superficial. We know this prosperity gospel, you've heard this, right? God wants you to be rich, wants you to be successful. Well, what do you do in the days when you're not rich and successful? He wants you to be rich, he wants you to be successful. Well, I just asked you a question. I'm not rich and successful today. He wants you to be rich. There's more to that, right? There's more to life than being rich. Success has a lot of definitions. So we have the great advantage of having that much greater and deeper understanding of what it means to be a Christian in the Catholic faith than some of our other Christian denominations have. But this is a challenge. As I was saying before, society used to help us a lot more. Right? The TV, there were certain things you couldn't say on television. They wouldn't be on television. I didn't have to worry. There were shows my parents wouldn't let me watch. But by and large, you didn't have to worry about hearing certain words on TV. You can't count on that anymore. They're going to hear anything. They're going to see anything that we didn't see before. Right? I couldn't go. I was in 9th grade. I tried to sneak into the rated R movie. There was somebody at the door standing there to see what color ticket stub you had. So we changed to keep our ticket stubs from the prior weeks to try to figure out which one it was. Never got in there. You look at me, I'm barely look like I almost am now. I looked like I was like 7 then. They were not going to let me in that room. There's nobody checking to see if you're walking into a rated R movie today. Society's not helping us that way anymore. So it's harder. We have to impose these boundaries on ourselves and on our families because the greater society isn't necessarily, and that's kind of sad. Because I found at work, just by the things that I do in conversations you have, that most of us, there's a lot more Christians out there than we think. This is the moral majority. Remember, they used to hear about, I don't know if you heard of there was a political movement called the silent majority. I think that's still there. I think, at least in Texas, most of us are still that way. And we're being deluded into thinking that through political correctness, we can't be that way. So work so politically correct. So how am I going to do this? Well, the first question is this: who said you couldn't? At our office, they got together. Somebody said, hey, it's National Day of Prayer. Let's go out by the flagpole and say a prayer. They did. Nobody stopped them. So we like that. Let's have a Bible study next week. There's a room open. They did. Nobody stopped them. Today, it's about 5 years later. Cassandra, how many people do you think are on that mailing list when they get a prayer request?
Maybe like 40 people more.
Oh, it's a couple hundred, I think. It's huge. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Right? And there are people all around the country that work for our country, for our company, that are spouses of those who work for our company, and just friends of theirs. So the network grows and grows and grows. So if I have a prayer request and I'm really upset, hey, if only 10% of those people pray for me, that's awesome. That's a lot of people. A lot more than 10. The thing is, what we found out was, if they just did it, nobody stopped. Even HR. So the young man was interviewing with us, and he somehow it came out that he was involved in his church, and the person from HR says, well, you know what, we have a Bible study during lunch. The HR person said that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. We have some advantage as Catholics. There is a quiet wisdom to being a Catholic. This is not our parish. This is not our band. And this is not us. Maybe it should be, but it's not. So when people learn that you're a Catholic, they're not scared that somebody's going to come knocking on your door. Catholics aren't going to come knocking on your door. They're not going to start waving their hands during the service and getting you all freaked. I mean, we're kind of laid back about that. Not laid back, but it's deeper. It's very deep. You have a quiet wisdom. And it's very hard for people in other denominations, and I was one of them, to understand that. What I thought was, you don't know the Bible because you can't tell me this chapter and verse. What they knew was, I know the Bible. If they studied it, they really knew that these stories from Genesis aren't to be taken literally necessarily. You can if you want. But quite often these are the stories that we learn from. Like any other civilization trying to describe the phenomena in their nature. How do we understand that? Right? Did God create the world in 7 days? Guess what? We don't care. If he did, great. If it took him millions of years, great. That's not the part I need to know to be saved. Salvation. So we have an advantage. This is when our company was purchased by Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett was at that time the richest man in the world. He had bounces back and forth, and he was at that time. And he came through, and we all had the opportunity to get our picture taken with him. And I got to sit at a table and talk with him about nothing important at all. But I just can say I did. I sat with the richest man in the world, and he is a very nice man. There's no doubt about it. But I didn't get my picture taken, mostly because I showed up late, like I was talking about before. I was late to a lot of things. But I was much more excited to meet this man. This is Father Justin. Grew up as a Baptist from El Paso. He went to school in Texas, at University of Texas. He's the only American at St. Catherine's Monastery in the Sinai. He is the librarian that is responsible for the oldest complete Bible that we have. Codex Sinaiticus. That guy's responsible for the oldest Bible we have. The most complete Bible. Older than Codex Vaticanus. Guy from El Paso. That was awesome. I met him about 2 weeks later, and I'm getting chills now. That's so much cooler than meeting the richest guy in the world to me. That's so much more valuable than Warren Buffett's money. I like Warren Buffett, believe me, I do. He's a great boss for our company. But that was a lot. So, keeping our faith at work. You know, a lot of times we think about what are the real, it's hard to do that. And you know what? It's not always about these kind of situations. If you work in an industry where this still goes on, it does make it harder, there's no doubt about it. But most of our industries are maturing past this. There's no. And so our problems come up and our faith at work comes up in less black and white terms. We don't really know. So this is an email I got from my boss yesterday. If you would like one of those license plate holders that reads, "In Berkshire Hathaway we trust, please let me know." I don't want one of those. Thank you. He's a great guy. He doesn't mean anything by it. He's a Christian himself. Didn't think of it. But I don't want one of those on my car. That is where my faith comes through. It's a little thing, right? So I talked to another coworker that also reports to him. I said, I didn't know what to do with that email. I didn't either. And so he sent another email later and said, "You're in my office if you want one." I don't think any of us responded. Guess what? We all were thinking the same way. Here's another one. Expense limits. This is where we see this at work. How many people have in a finance or accounting department that's pretty tight on expenses? Most of us. How many have one that's loose on expenses? Oh, you do? Good for you. Okay. Most of us don't experience that. So I go and I buy some cereal and milk that'll buy me breakfast for 3-4 days when I'm on traveling. And I could expense up to $15 now, I think, a day for breakfast. But I didn't. I spent $8. It covered me for 3 days. $8. I could have spent $45. Might have said, help me out, I'm an Aggie. $36 or so. That's not right. $37 that I saved the company, theoretically. But if I were to turn in an expense on a dinner that was $5 over, too bad. I only get the maximum of $25. So I'm inclined to think, I saved you $37 and you cost me $5. I start rationalizing these things. And I think, well, maybe when I turn in my mileage is $5 more than it should have been. So that's where our morals start to work. Oftentimes, it's not always the big thing. We start to rationalize things. And you know what? My soul is not worth a couple of bucks. And I guarantee you my boss don't want that to happen. Even if he does it, I can't do that. So it costs me a few $5 every now and then. It's a great place to work and provides the income for my family. But I'm not going to do that. And I'm asking you, don't do that either. It's not working. That's one of the places we run into it. So the question is, do you really want to work someplace where you have to bend your ideals to fit in? Or do you want to work somewhere where your ideals fit in? So if you go to work and they're cursing all day and they won't stop, or you go to work and people are cheating or goofing off half the day and not working, and that's allowed to go on forever, and maybe that's not where you should be. Right? Don't bend your ideals for your job. I understand what it means to not have a job. I've been there. I know what that means. But I think we have to be true to ourselves for sure. So some practical ways. Aaron asked me to give you some practical ways to live out your faith. Go out to lunch with your coworkers and say grace. This is amazing when you do this. It is amazing. I have yet to have any person tell me that please don't do that, or don't do that with me, or I won't participate. You know what I hear? Thank you. Time and time again, they say thank you. And I have a brand new boss this week. And I went to dinner with him lunch with him last Thursday. And beforehand, I said grace. I asked him, can we say grace? He said, yeah. We did. And it sets the stage. So now, if something that's kind of iffy comes up, they're going to remember that. Usually they appreciate it anyway, because you know what? There's more of us than we think there are. There's more Christians out there than we think we are. And we're just scared. We're scared that HR is going to say we can't do that. We're scared that it's not politically correct. It's going to offend somebody. I haven't been offended yet. I have a good friend that started doing this about 3 years ago, and 3 years and lots of lunches. Hasn't offended anybody that I know of yet. And it opens up the conversation, because what happens over time is that one day after work, somebody's going to be having a rough day. And they're going to want to talk to somebody about it. And it's kind of quiet. There's only a few of you left. And they're going to remember that you prayed with them at lunch. And they're going to come by and talk to you about it. And you'll be able to give some solace, advice, friendship to somebody who really needs it. It's going to open that opportunity. And if you just plant a seed, that's okay. Jesus tells us the parable of the sower. We're all planting seeds all the time. And we don't have to, everybody we encounter, my neighbor across the street workers explained this to me, that's everybody you encounter, you're not going to change, you're not going to be all the answers to them when they come to you. You give a little bit, and they'll meet somebody else, and they'll give a little bit, and as you go on, we'll build the kingdom of God together. So, some things that you can do that I found is very helpful. Invite other Catholics at work that you know are Catholics to the holy days. It's easy. There's usually a parish close enough to everywhere we work that we can go during lunch and go. And that helps us stay be Catholic together. And it builds up our network at work. And you know what? A lot of times it's hard for us to go to holy days, even though we're supposed to. It's a lot easier if you just go at lunch, right? So tomorrow is our first opportunity. It's not a holy day of obligation, but it's a good chance. People like to go ashes. Then they ask you, what's that dirt on your head? You get to explain what that's all about. Thursday, May 14th, these are work days. There are other holy days, but these are the ones that are work days this year. So here's 3 chances we get to do that at work. May 14th, December 8th, go ahead and put that on your calendar and invite a friend to Mass, or to the service at that. You can set up a Bible study at work, but you know what? Probably nobody said you couldn't. And even if you did, they probably won't tell you to stop. I think you can go out on that one. Notice people's mood. Occasionally you get this opportunity, as I described, when they come to you after work. And sometimes it comes across as kind of glib when you say, I'll pray for you. Do it right then. Stop and pray with them right then. Because they need it. They brought it. It took a lot for them to come and ask you and tell you about it. If you just do it right then, it's so much more genuine. You've prayed for them, they feel it, they heard it, and it builds you up so much better. And it's not glib, because you don't know if somebody prays for you or not. Do they really mean it? It's like when somebody says, how you doing today? Horrible. Well, okay, great. See you tomorrow. Pray with them right then. You have a great chance to do that. We do. We all have those chances. You asked me to talk about what I look for in hiring and promotions. I'm going to try to hit all the targets along the way. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. I look for people who are, as my neighbor described it, risk takers. People who will take initiative to go out and do more and do something that's altruistic. Not just in your job, but something that benefits your job and several other jobs. Because there you're doing something bigger than you. Because people get promoted are people who lead. If you have to tell the employee what to do all the time, you might as well do it yourself. You don't have time to do anything else. You can't make their decisions for them. You want people who can make their own decisions. And you know what? I want people who made mistakes and learn from them. Because if you act like you never made a mistake, you're deluding yourself, or you're really not paying attention. Because we've all made mistakes. No doubt about it. One of the first mistakes I made at work was at General Dynamics. We had a guy that worked on your floor. I can't remember his name now. And I was a co-op student, and I had to make sure everybody had these quality clauses on the purchase orders. That was my job, to QC them, make sure they were on there. And this guy had a tough day, and I come down there, this little 19-year-old kid, and I'm going, hey, you put these polyclosses on there. And this guy had a horrible day, and it was his birthday. And here's this little kid coming at 5 o'clock, pounding him about that. You know, and I'd have taken a little more time to know where he was in this day. I probably would have come back tomorrow. So I learned a lesson pretty early. We all can learn lessons, you know, from the mistakes we make. So the problem is not learning from our mistakes. So that's what I'll tell you about hiring and promotions. What else do I have? Challenges for us as individual Catholics. So can we address the misconceptions of our faith? Because people think we pray to statues, we pray to Mary, we can do anything we want as long as we go confess it. And why do you have to confess to a priest anyway? Why can't you just tell God yourself? Never mind that it's so much more accountable when you actually tell a priest that you're going to stop doing it, versus you say, God, I'm not going to do this anymore. But when I go and tell that priest I'm not going to do it, and then I see him every Sunday, I'm really going to try not to do it, right? Because it just seems more, it's physical, it's tangible. We need to be a part of the ministries at our parishes. Here, this is one I find that has really opened up a lot of doors. St. Patrick's Day, St. Valentine's Day, Halloween, and Christ's Mass, Christmas. People don't think about these things where they came from. So when St. Patrick's Day rolls around, I usually send out an email to that list and tells everybody who St. Patrick was. It's not a guy who invented green beer, right? St. Valentine was a real man, a real martyr of the church. And we celebrate them in some other way. And so now all of a sudden people go, man, that Catholic stuff is all over the place. It's in everything we do. I didn't realize that. Even All Souls Day, Halloween, All Saints Day. Great opportunities for us to bring more to the rest of the world that doesn't understand even where the things that we all appreciate. We don't know where they come from, and how there's something deeper to Catholicism than they probably know. One thing I do find that's very helpful is don't get sucked into debates about religion. People that want to debate you usually don't want to change their mind. If they want to listen and talk with you and converse with you, they might. So, and just be careful. I just say just be careful about that. You know, it's hard to intellectually win that battle that's really won by the heart. So, 3 direct challenges you can do now. Invite people at work to go get some ashes. Tomorrow's our first chance to do this. You got a chance tomorrow. Say grace at lunch for your coworkers. Do it. You got it. You got guts. You can do it. Not so hard. These are 2 easy things. Take off on Good Friday. We used to get that off as a holiday. Now it's not a holiday anymore. I'm taking off. I haven't worked a Good Friday since. I take that day off. It's an important day. Let's keep it holy. 3 direct challenges for your generation. Attract people to our faith without watering it down or glamorizing it. People attract other people. The way you live your life is how you're going to get more people to come to our faith. They come to the faith. It's great to go to a service where they have great music. There's no doubt, that's fine. But if you were really struggling about making a decision for Christ, you're probably not going to go to that event because it's exciting. You're dealing with some big things, and you want to talk to somebody one-on-one and really have a deeper conversation. So, how do we grow our faith without watering it down, which the media is loath to do with our Pope right now? Oh, the Pope said something about gay people. That means it's all good now, right? People will hear what they want to hear. And it's a challenge. We do need to minister to all the people. For example, the next thing I think is a challenge to your generation and mine. How do we overturn Roe versus Wade to bring our laws back in line with our morals, but not drive away women who've had an abortion? There are a lot of women who've had abortions. Good reasons, or there's other reasons. They've had abortions. And so when we're out here marching around, they're feeling judged. So how do we end that and still minister and still be loving and hold them? It's hard, but I think it's what we need to do. I think we have to do that. And I don't even have a Facebook account, but I bet everybody here does. You can do things in social media that I can't, that my generation won't. My father's generation thought he wouldn't, but he has a Facebook page. You can reach so many people, particularly in areas of the world where they can't be Christians, not openly. We can get, Twitter, remember the Arab Spring? All that came around through Twitter. Imagine us reaching people for Christ through Twitter. We could do that because these totalitarian governments can't find a way to block all the media that we can get to them. So if we use it judiciously, wisely, humbly, we can get to places where that don't have the advantage of being in the United States, where you can be, Christian and not have to worry about it. So with that, I'll end for that as a challenge to the generation, a challenge to you as individuals. I thank you very much for allowing me to come.
We've got time for about 2 questions, so we can just...
Okay. Any questions at all? No? Yes, ma'am.
So I still haven't figured out, why were you going to the Catholic Church when you weren't Catholic? Just out of curiosity.
That's a good question.
How'd you end up there?
When I was when I would come back and forth up here as a co-op student, I had a roommate whose father was a Baptist minister, and he told me about a church on the southwest side of town. And I got there, and they didn't have any hymnals. The music was played up on the screen, and it just started to not feel like church anymore. It was weird. It was overhead. I mean, I get it. I understand. And it's a lot cheaper to do overheads than it is print hymnals. No doubt about that. But it didn't feel right. And I saw, the other day somebody told me about Harvest Church over 377. They said, Harvest Baptist. I said, wait a minute, that's a Baptist church? It's non-denominational now. They used to be Baptist. Northwood Church, right by my place, has a great moms program. Northwood Baptist Church, now just as Northwood Church. Denominations are scared to death to be who they are because they're chasing what they assume society wants. Non-denominational, non-confrontational, politically correct. I can't put a label on it because some people won't like that. Catholic Church didn't like that. Catholic. Kato holos, for all. And so I saw that in Catholic Church. I saw in the Catholic Church something that was closer to the Baptist church I was growing up in, because they had a real dynamic priest there, and the much more respectful type of service. And my wife was no way she was going to a Baptist church. So a stalwart Catholic had already done all her church shopping, and she'd come back to where she started. So that's a big reason. Two things together. So these changes in other churches that we see, you go to church now, they got Starbucks and all this stuff, and they go, oh, we need to have that. And sometimes I think we should have stuff like that because it's attractive. But that's kind of missing the point a lot of times too. Is it about worship anymore? Or is it about something else? So I think we have an advantage, but we got to get to the people that are saying, there's got to be something different, because I can go to Starbucks anywhere. So where do I get deeper than that? So that's kind of why I went that way. And I should have joined a lot earlier. I just hard-headed, like a lot of men. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So I'm a cradle Catholic.
Yes, sir.
For a lot of us are. And, I know a few people have gone through RCIA, and sometimes I feel like they're better at, for lack of a better phrase, being Catholic than I am. So for somebody who's gone through RCIA fairly recently, are there some teachings of the church that you feel like some people have been Catholic their entire lives, sometimes forget or aren't very good at applying their day-to-day life?
Sometimes forget. I'm not sure that there are. What I can say is your feeling is very common. Converts are always the biggest, the most vibrant in a community. Look at Saul when he becomes Paul. He goes all over the world. He gets thrown in prison all the time. He becomes the biggest speaker. He's going to lots more places. We know lots more about what Paul did than any of the 12 disciples did. So converts have that. So you're not alone in feeling that, but you have the advantage of having grown up with that. Sometimes parents say, I don't want to baptize my child, or I don't want to force them. I want them to grow up and then choose their religion. You know what? What about every time they needed that religion while they were growing up? That faith. If they choose to change denominations as adults, it's one thing. Well, what usually happens is they grow up without anything to grasp onto, and they're lost. So I do understand what you're saying, and I think a lot of it comes from we go through this as a time when we're worried about all kinds of crazy stuff, like whether or not this girl will date me, and I can't even ask her out. I'm scared to death to ask her out, and all these other things. Oh, I got to go to catechism tonight. And we're going through all these different things at the same time. And when you're an adult and you get to go through RCA, you kind of pass a lot of that, and you get to think more about what it is you're doing when you're confirmed and those questions that are going on. I will say, I like the rosary. I never thought I would, because, man, that's such a Catholic thing. Count the beads, come on. Say the same prayer over and over and over and over again. But if you think about the mysteries of each one, if you could remember the mysteries of each one, you could tell somebody about everything it means to be about Jesus, who doesn't know anything about Jesus. If you could remember the mysteries, you could tell the whole story of Jesus from that. I still have a hard time keeping the prayers right and thinking about that. I know it takes practice, but it's awesome. So,
All right, that's it. There you go.
oh, thank you.
Yeah. Do I need the mic, or can y'all hear me?